and then all of a sudden the page disappears. I think this is a theme, but this is very, very unfortunate that you got a plant from another seller, but it wasn't even the right plant and it was rotting. Rotting plants is, I'm not gonna say like a super common experience with buying plants online, but if the seller doesn't know how to ship plants correctly, it could definitely happen. Or also if your shipping is delayed in any way and the plant is sitting in too moist of a substrate, it can also happen then. You know, if it's just sitting in too wet of sphagnum moss for too long, those roots can rot. That has happened to me before. But I'm really glad that you were able to make a friend. Sounds like a lifelong plant friend out of this whole ordeal. That is definitely the silver lining. Next up, we have, I've purchased many times from this seller before, always super nice, etc. Unfortunately, a box was lost in the mail for 2 weeks plus. They said that if the plant had died or something, they would replace. Pretty common practice, but also sometimes sellers will have it in their rules that they're not going to replace plants if they get lost in the mail, because at that point, it's sort of out of their hands. So you just have to read the fine print. Also said that they would help filing the claim for insurance. None of that happened. When I opened the box, most of the plants were okay. However, one of them had root rot, probably because it was in the mail for so long. I sent video, pictures, and updates and never got a replacement or credit. They claim on their Insta and lives that they're super helpful in sticky situations, but I found that's not entirely true. With the 2 plants, I've had issues. I only got suggestions on how to take care of them and curt answers. Overall, not a bad seller, but did not find helpful or that they kept their word in that regard. Whew. I feel like this situation feels less scammy, but more a just bad experience with a seller. And this is definitely something that I see a lot. This is a very common experience. I'm not defending the seller by any means. I don't know who the seller is, but they probably maybe have a lot of orders going out and are over promising what they can provide their customers as far as aftercare goes. I think especially when a plant or like a box gets lost for multiple weeks, those cases should be prioritized in the eyes of the seller, especially because this is a repeat buyer. And on the seller side of things, you know when someone is a repeat buyer, like you can see the history usually, I guess depending on what software they're using. But if it's a small enough operation, unless it's like a massive operation, you're probably gonna notice when you have repeat buyers. I mean, you have them on your email list probably as like a tagged as a repeat buyer. So the point is, they definitely should have paid more attention. I think especially because you are a repeat buyer, and not promised to help people in those situations if they're not actually going to. I do think that a lot of the time orders that don't go well can fall between the cracks if they have a lot of other things going on, but still sucks for you. And I'm really sorry that your plants didn't fare very well. And I hope that if you've ordered from them again, that the plants were in better condition. But honestly, if this happened to me, I think that might make me not want to go to that seller anymore. Because if I'm giving them like my hard-earned cash over and over and over again, I'd want them to notice that, or at least, you know, hold up their end of the bargain. Okay, next up, I ordered an Anthurium metallicum from an online shop. I think it costs around $150. Depending on the size of the Anthurium, I think that's probably fair. Anthurium are still pretty expensive. I'm gonna look up what that looks like, because I don't think I've heard of this one. That's a beautiful plant. Did I just get a new wish list plant? The shop policy says it could take up to a month to ship, which probably should have been the first red flag. I waited a month and then emailed the shop. Never heard anything back, and when I tried to pull up the shop page, it had disappeared completely. Okay, that's 2 times that this has happened. We should keep score of like how many repeat situations we have. The shop owner turned out to be a well-known scammer within the plant community. Luckily, I was able to contact my bank and get the money back. Wow. That is wild. There are a few scammers that have danced around the plant community and they kind of take on different personas. So I honestly don't know if it's like one person who just has been really widespread, or maybe 2 or 3 people that have been really widespread. It's hard to know because they're obviously not showing their face, and like the names of their brands are not going to be the same. I think that people have drawn similarities between certain ones, so they know like, oh, this is this person again, but they'll usually refer to this new scammer by the old scammer's name. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? We don't actually know who these scammers are. And actually one of my scam stories And it didn't go badly for me, which has happened several times actually. I did see a submission from someone that I've purchased from who turned out to be a scammer, and it worked out for me, but it didn't for like the majority of people, but we'll get to that in a second. But I ordered a Sansevieria Bantel Sensation. I got it from this person who turned out to be really sketchy, and it was early on in my plant journey, and I gave them my address and I didn't really even know them at all. And it turned out that they were like really verbally abusive to other women online and like really threatening and like threatening to basically like dox people, like give out your address and stuff like that. I did not have a negative experience with this person, but that doesn't really matter. Like they're still a bad person that they did that to other people. I just happened to get lucky. Okay, so I'm sorry that happened to you. This is a theme that I think we're gonna see come up a few more times, but I'm really glad you were able to get your money back. Definitely contact your bank if this happens to you. Usually you can. Not all the time, but usually. Here we go. In the last couple of months, I have bought several plants from different local sellers that ended up having severe issues with root systems. Okay, these are local sellers. A 10-year-old Hoya caryi, which came in an 8-inch pot that included nothing but dead roots. Had to chop and prop, that sucks. I'm glad that you could at least chop and prop. 8-inch pot sounds like it was probably a good sized plant. A Philodendron gloriosa mother plant that had one living root left. And I can imagine what that root probably looked like. Probably like a piece of angel spaghetti. Chopped and propped successfully. Roots eventually grew back. Okay, good. A Hoya carnosa tricolor with half the cuttings being dead. Yikes. The other half of the cuttings just thrown into the pot without roots. At this point, I feel more confident buying unrooted cuttings and propagating them than buying existing plants. This is something that I agree with, and it's something that I would have never said like a couple years ago. I would have always said get rooted cuttings. But honestly, sometimes like if you're not buying from someone who you know knows what they're doing, sometimes it's better just to get an unrooted cutting because you can root it yourself. And usually if it's unrooted, that means it was very freshly cut so that you can get it within like 2 or 3 days, which is fine. Plants can live as long as they're in like a moist environment, like in spag or even sometimes like a wet paper towel, they should be fine. But yeah, this is really unfortunate, especially that they're local because you might bump into them a lot in your local plant community and that's kind of awkward. A follow-up question, did you talk to these sellers and tell them what was going on? Because especially if it's a local person, you're probably not the only person to experience this. And it sounds like they're giving or selling some pretty mature plants that are in bad condition. So that's definitely concerning. I'm sorry that happened to you. And I do agree with your sentiment that oftentimes buying unrooted cuttings might be better, unless the person knows what they're doing, of course. Okay, local plant store. I went to a local plant store and they had a rare plant tent that I was exploring, and I found the cheapest rare plant from that tent, which was can't remember how to spell it. Okay, Camposportianum. Sure. It was literally a baby grown from a wet stick and had like 2 tiny leaves, and it was $25. I bought it thinking I was getting a steal, and it started looking iffy after just a few days. Turns out it had root rot. So much root rot. I luckily saved it and started to grow a bit, but I went to another plant store like 2 weeks later and they had a full-ass Campo plant for less than what I paid. Oh, that sucks. That really sucks. Oh my gosh. This is one of the reasons that I don't buy like tiny rare plants, because it's just so risky whether or not it's actually going to make it to that adult form, and I'd rather that pressure be put on the seller or the propagator rather than me. So for example, with my El Choco Red, I bought like a big one with like 4 leaves and it was very established at the time. And I think it was definitely over $100, which kind of sucks, but I've seen much smaller ones sold for like the $50 range. But it's just such a risk that it'll actually make it to that older stage that I just started buying those types of plants a little bit more mature. And I really hate that you went to another place 2 weeks later and found it like a bigger one for less than half of what you paid. That's another reason why I always say don't buy a plant right when you see it, like do some market research first. But I totally understand the excitement of seeing something and also, you know, getting a good deal on it and being excited. Did you pick up the second Campo? I'm wondering. Because if it was less than 25 bucks and it was bigger, I would probably buy the second one as well as the first one and just be like, I learned my lesson, I'm not gonna do that again. So did you? I don't know. I need follow-ups. I want to talk to you guys.